Okay, we're recording at 7:30. Welcome, I'm glad you're here.
Let's welcome Pastor Emmanuel. Give him a hand if you could.
Bless the Lord, brothers. As always, we count it a privilege and an honor to be in the presence of the Lord, to be before his people. We're in John chapter 2. Dennis, this is kind of getting a little scary.
Have faith, my friend.
Easy for you to say. You're sitting over there. John chapter 2. I wasn't here last week for chapter 1, but I'm certain that you got some things that blessed you. And here in chapter 2, John starts out this chapter by saying, "And the third day." Most of the scholars was not necessarily attributing that to John saying on Wednesday or Tuesday, but 3 days later. What transpired 3 days prior?
Party.
No, prior.
Oh, prior.
Yeah. So in chapter 1, what was the last thing that took place? The calling of Nathanael.
Yeah.
Yeah, he encountered Nathanael and was basically telling him that he saw him under the fig tree, and Nathanael was so astonished. Have you ever had someone say something to you that was astonishing like that, or something prophetic, or just you like, how did they come across that kind of information? Only maybe 1 or 2 times something like that has transpired in my life, but I do know that God conveys and communicates, especially to bring us to a place of confirmation, to a place of comfort and understanding that we're dealing with him. Well, it says here that, will someone read verses 1 and 2 for me, please?
On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had been invited to the wedding.
Okay. Apparently, some say that this was possibly, I don't see how they arrived at that, but this was possibly John's wedding. But we do believe that it was a relative of Jesus and someone very close to the family, that Mary would be in attendance, and that Jesus and his disciples would get a special invitation to invite Jesus. Man, that must have felt pretty good, that you could invite the Lord and feel pretty reasonable that he would show up, that he would come to an affair that you were especially having. When I was in Jerusalem, I was often wandering as I wandered, and I stumbled upon a Jewish wedding. And I don't know what's wrong with me, but I think I'm privileged or something. Because when I wandered in and I, looked around, I saw, that this was going on. So I started talking to this young man, and I did not know that he was the bridegroom. He looked like he was about 10. I mean, he really did. He looked really young. And I just started talking, I wanted to know what the event was. And he was saying he was being wedded. And it was so festive. It was so beautiful. There was so much food and wine, and people it just looked like such a gala affair. And I was really kind of blown away by it. But it kind of set me in the mindset of this occasion. And Jesus is invited to this wedding, and we kind of know the story. I'm sure you've read it, but you kind of know the story. In the midst of the wedding, they run out of wine. What did you derive from that?
They had a lot. They've been drinking a lot.
Okay. It really was pouring it back, right?
More people there than they thought there was going to be.
Yeah, they might have kind of underestimated the number of guests, because Jesus, his disciples wasn't crashing the wedding. John actually said that they were invited.
Yeah.
So whoever was having the wedding anticipated many of the guests, but apparently there were more than they had outfitted for.
Like yourself, you went to a wedding and they.
Well, I didn't. I was invited though. Actually, the young man introduced me to his father, and the father literally said, "Hey, we would love to have you as my guest." I was too afraid. I was like, "Well, thank you. That's very nice." And I was gonna go upstairs and do some studying, but it was really interesting to say the least. And it was a possibility that these were not the wealthiest of people, and they just gave out. But why do you think it was such a concern to Mary? And this is why I derived at the idea that this might have been family. This might have been a relative. Because here's the first recorded miracle that John writes, and they gave out of wine. What concern would that be of God? Why would that be such a big deal? In my mind, okay, we run out of wine. It's time for you to go home. That's all that says. We're done. I've gone to many parties, and okay, the booze is gone, and let's go. Let's either find another one or go somewhere else. But she was concerned that there was no wine. And she approaches the Lord and says, they have no more wine. What did you think of his response to her?
It's a typical mom pushing her son.
Wow. I've been pushed by mom a few times. Actually, my mom was one of my greatest champions. My mother is 90 this year, and she went with my wife and I to Mexico this year, and I wanted to take her out of the country. She went with us, and it was very, very nice. My mom is a young 90. She's still driving and very, very alert and articulate and fun-loving. She was at my house on Sunday, and just a hoot to just hang out with and listen to. She has a million stories. She was the oldest of her siblings. She's 90.
Yes, she should have.
She got a million stories. And she was the youngest, and her mother passed when she was 4. So she had the responsibility of assisting and raising her siblings, and so she just is a ball, and all of her siblings are deceased now, and she's the only left, and it's amazing that her being the oldest would be the one that's still here. But yes, moms can say some things and make requests and, kind of put you in a position that you want to say, Mama, mind your business. But Jesus responds, woman, what do I have to do with this? What does that have to do with me? What business is that of mine? But what do you think? I mean, this was just amazing to me. What do you think of her response?
She knew something the rest of the people didn't know.
Why do you think she knew something? What do you think she knew?
Well, all the way from the birth.
Hallelujah.
Also, it was the virgin birth, so she knew a long time ago he was special.
She knew that this was not an ordinary anybody. And she remembered especially what the angel said to her. And that she never knew a man. She never had intercourse with a man. And now she's pregnant. And 9 months later, she gives birth. And I can't imagine what it might have been like raising God. But she did. And I don't know if she was expecting that, okay, it's time for your public ministry, for you to show the world who you are. But she kind of thrusts him out into this arena. Yes, Dennis.
Doesn't his response not just say, why are you involved, but doesn't it imply exactly what you're saying? Because he says, my time has not come yet.
Exactly.
So exactly what you're saying, it seems that logically she's implying that he needs to do something. She knows he can do a miracle, do something about it.
Okay.
Do you think she knew that he could do miracles at that time? I mean, looking forward to knowing that the angel had spoken to her, he had not yet performed any miracles. Do you still that are recorded? It's interesting to think that thought.
And this is me just thinking, and that's why I'm giving you the opportunity to do so also. We know that she knows that he is of God. She experienced this angel. She experienced this miraculous birth. And she's anticipating. However God is going to do whatever God is going to do, she has to be anticipating. But his response of, woman, what have I to do with you? What is this to me? First, I want to just say that I concur with most of the scholars. I don't think this was a remark of disdainment or put down in any way. When I first read it early in studying, I thought he was kind of putting her in a place. Because we don't I never refer to my mother as woman. Woman, mind your business. I never kind of addressed my mother like that. But then in study, I discovered that it was maybe the translation maybe got lost, but it was more like lady than woman, or some derogatory term. It was an endearment. And that he was basically just saying, our role is changing. And your position in my life, you're being relieved of any responsibilities that you might have as I take on the responsibilities of my father. So it's for him. He's in charge now. And you no longer have that role in my life, in who I am and what I'm about. But she then turns to the servants and says, do whatever he says. Now, no more profound words, because Mary didn't say a whole lot. We have very little recorded dialogue from her. From his birth, throughout his life, we have very little dialogue. But these are profound words. Because even when the Pharisees asked Jesus, how might we work the works of him, of God? How might we do the works of God? And what did Jesus respond? Believe on him he said, he that does the will of my Father, believe on what I say. Follow what I say. And that's what she's saying to us, saying. Whatever he tells you, do it. Whatever he says, do it. And we need to hear those words. What has he said to you? What does he say to you? Whatever he says, do it. Let's finish reading for a moment. Read up to about, someone read up to verse 11 for me. 3 to 11.
When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, they have no more wine. Dear woman, why do you invite me? Jesus replied, my time has not yet come. His mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons.
Wow. 6. 30 gallons. They won't be running out anytime soon. And one scholar suggested that not only was God interested in meeting the need, the immediate need, but that there was the possibility that this wine would be used later to sell.
It's like the feeding the 5,000, a whole bunch left over.
Some fragments were left over, and there would be some left over. And if it was all that was said it would sell and possibly bring in a good bounty. So he was not just meeting an immediate need, but he was also possibly supplying a future need or a benefit to this family that might not have been in a place of prosperity or great wealth. So there was that concern. Now he says there was 6 stone pots of water, or the pots were there for water, for purification. And Jesus tells the servants to fill it with water. Now, we know what water is, H2O. But give me some properties of water. What do you think about when you think about water?
Needed to live.
Got to have it for life. It is the actual symbol for life. When they're looking for life on other planets and other places, they look to see if there's water. Because where there's water, there's life. And I don't think it was just by chance, because it didn't necessarily need to have been those water pots. It could have been some other container or some other thing. But it was water that was used. And water is used for cleansing. Water is used for purification. Water is symbolized for life. And he's about to convert the water, to change it. Now, if Jesus can change water into wine, don't you think he can make a liar a saint? Don't you think he can change a publican to a man of integrity? I think that Jesus was allowing them to understand that I'm the change agent. I have the capacity to make things new or make things different. And he changes water into wine. Wine, what does wine symbolize? Water symbolizes natural life. human life, biological life. And wine symbolizes spiritual life. Jesus says later, drink this cup. He said, for in it, it is the cup of my blood in the new covenant. Drink it in remembrance of me. So wine has always had a significance in Scripture or in dealing with God of that of spiritual cleansing and spiritual life development. So it wasn't just by chance that Jesus was turning this water to wine or converting it, changing it. It having a continual change. It would never revert back to water. This won't weaken. It won't, it was that change, and it was complete. They wouldn't come back 2 weeks later and it was back to water, because Jesus changed it. And when Jesus changes something, it's changed. A lot of us look at what we are experiencing of God, and we think that there's a vacillation. Well, I was okay, but now I'm not okay. Not the change of Jesus. If Jesus converts, it's permanent. It's a done deal. We just have to make sure we're dealing with Jesus. Finish reading, please. I think you stopped at 6.
Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water, so they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, everyone brings out the choice wines first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have drank too much. But you have saved the best till now. This is the first of his miraculous signs Jesus performed in Cana of Galilee. He thus revealed his glory, and his disciples put their faith in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum.
Oh, okay. That's good. Okay. So Jesus asked the servants to fill the containers, the water pots. He didn't tell them how to fill it or what to do, but these men filled it to the brim. They weren't sure of what Jesus was about to do. They could have just lazily put water in it. But they filled it to the brim. What a mindset. When God asks you to do something, how much would you do? Do you do just what he asked you? I just put some water in it. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know if there's some other things are going to go in it or what it's about. But they filled it to the brim. Will you fill it to the brim? If he asks you to give, will you give to the brim? If he asks you to love, will you love to the brim? Or will you just do enough to say that you love? These men did what was required or what was asked of them, but they did it to the full. And that's commendable for them. Now they knew, and we're not told where the conversion took place. When he told them, now take it to the master of the feast. That person that was in charge. Most weddings have a planner or a person that's responsible for all of the goings-ons and responsible for the guests. And Jesus wanted that person to be the examiner. He could have asked those servants, hey, taste it and see if it's sufficient, if it's okay. Jesus knew that if he did the miracle, it was superior. It was great. It was wonderful. But he had the master of the feast to attest to it. Now, the master of the feast wasn't privy to what went in the water pots. All he was privy to was what he tasted. Those servants, can you imagine how they felt? They knew we filled it with water. What is this guy talking about? And what was the host, the master of ceremony? What was his response?
Good stuff.
This top shelf. This was the best. Yes.
I wonder what was going through the minds of the servants when they said, "Who wants to take this water?" I mean,
Exactly. You want us to carry this water to this guy who's expecting wine?
fire. Right.
30 gallons is heavy too.
I don't think they took the whole container. They probably just took a cupful or enough to taste.
But this wasn't really a public miracle. I mean, only people who knew would have been the head waiter and the bridegroom and the servers. Nobody else really knew where it came from. They just were enjoying it.
Exactly. But public referred to anybody that was not in his entourage. It was now.
But all the other miracles with the 5,000 with the feeding, the loaves and fishes, and everything else, was more. Did they know not
Some of the recorded was more exposed, but this was outside of the realm of the family, outside of the realm of those called disciples, and in the company of somebody that was not a part of his entourage. And as he began to spread abroad, but eventually, do you think everybody just kept it to themselves? Do you think those servants didn't tell somebody else that, hey man, I put water in that pot? And I don't know what that guy was drinking. That he thinks that water tastes like the best of wine, but no, I believe they might have sipped some too. Or it was 180 gallons of it. They probably, got some themselves. But